Star Wars: The Old Republic has been one of the most anticipated games since it was announced in late 2008. It's being made by the same people that created Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter Nights, Jade Empire, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, and of course, Knights of the Old Republic. However, The Old Republic is Bioware's first multiplayer game. Expectations are obviously high from everyone. From what I've heard, EA persuaded Bioware to create a massively multiplayer online role-playing game to compete with World of Warcraft. Before I truly start this review, I just want to note that I am not biased toward World of Warcraft, although I do believe the games are very similar. I would also like to add that a review is an objective opinion. Just because I did or did not like the game doesn't mean that you should or will have the same opinion. I got to play The Old Republic in both the closed beta and the beta weekend. The Old Republic tries to stand out from the MMO crowd using one major feature: its voiced cutscenes. I fucking love Knights of the Old Republic. The story drew me in, the gameplay was decent and challenging enough to keep me interested until the final twists. There was no romance to deal with, no frustrating grind, and great mechanics and atmosphere. The Old Republic tries to mimic this by introducing cutscenes into the game, replacing standard quest text. It's a great addition to the game and helps it feel more like a single-player RPG. However, this feature doesn't cure its MMO disease. Immediately after you create your character and go through the initial cutscenes, you'll end up with the same tired old gameplay from every MMO you've ever played. After a few hours of listening to the cutscenes, I started skipping them since they had no effect on the world or my gameplay. The sound design in the game is incredible. There's an entirely newly composed soundtrack created just for this game, and it fits perfectly. Even after hearing it for 20 hours, it never seems to get old. The sound effects are also great, although in fairness, it's really not much out of the ordinary. The voice acting in particular is top-notch. Although the voice actors are dealing with some subpar writing, which I'll get to later on, the amount of dialogue in the game is huge and it is very well acted. The companion system, another one of the big features Bioware has been touting, is like an additional pet or party member for every single player in the game. From my playtime, it seemed like this pet trivialized the already easy solo content in the game, since the companions are equipped with tanking abilities, allowing you to easily avoid taking any damage. Companions are also able to sell all your worthless junk in your inventory, similar to the pets in Torchlight. There is a load of content I did not get to experience due to having limited amounts of time in the game. For example, there is a flight minigame which seems like a mix of Rogue Squadron and Star Fox. From the videos I've watched and the previews I've seen, it actually looks pretty awesome. However, I've been told this is an on-rails kill X amount of things event and gets boring very quickly. I also never spent much time in my own ship, but I've heard that it's more of a vanity thing, and no one can even visit you. I've obviously yet to experience any kind of endgame content, but at the moment, I'm told that it's being shipped with not much to do. Again, I could be entirely wrong as I've yet to experience any kind of endgame content for myself. Either way, Bioware's main goal with The Old Republic was to give you an intriguing storyline to motivate you between 1 and 50. Although I have only put roughly 20 hours into the game, I'm fairly certain that's enough time to get a decent outlook on how the 1 to 50 experience plays out. I want to shift focus to the main meat of the game, the gameplay. This is where the game fails on all counts. The combat is the same dull combat that has been part of nearly every major MMO in the last 10 years. Other than some changes to basic mechanics, you're still going to be spamming your rotation and min-maxing at the end of the game. There also seems to be some problems with enemy placement. For some strange reason, there are very few times when there are lone enemies. Opponents seem to enjoy standing around in packs of 3. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, it just stands out sharply because it feels so artificial. MMOs like The Old Republic seem to be stuck 10 years in the past. The quests and the majority of the gameplay revolve around the same combination of kill X enemies, deliver Y item, or loot Z items. We're 7 years past the launch of the biggest MMO of all time, and yet there's still no way around global cooldown, constantly reminding you that you're playing with the limitations of a massive server. There is also very little challenge from what I have played. Every encounter seems to be trivialized and just a matter of how much time you have to spend. There is no using your wits or skill to complete challenges in any of the single-player content. The world also feels broken, linear, and small due to the severe instancing. You will traverse zones extremely linearly, going from quest to quest until you explore an entire zone and move on to the next one. There is no open world, and there are loading screens between each zone. The cutscenes, as I've mentioned before, are supposed to motivate and intrigue you, but due to the stale gameplay and the static world, you start to realize they're a pointless measure to try to keep you entertained, and you begin to skip them. You would think that Bioware, having such an enormous amount of lore to work with, would allow you to play with more interesting races, but instead they've dug up every humanoid race and called it a day. I guess races are more of a vanity thing, but it's something you have to look at the entire game, and it gets boring when literally everyone looks the same. The classes are also unimaginative. Each side has 4 classes. The classes are mirrored on both sides, so in reality, there are 4 total classes. Upon reaching level 10, you can choose from 2 different advanced classes, each having 3 talent trees. This brings the total number of classes to 8, all being mostly different. However, there are a lot of shared abilities between advanced classes, so at times it feels like it's even less than 8. The animations are subpar. In fairness, Bioware has never really had top-notch animations or graphics. They certainly get the job done, but a lot of the time they ruin the immersion. Which reminds me, the writing is a cringe-worthy mess. I felt like I was reading some kind of twisted fan fiction from a 15-year-old Twilight fan. I obviously haven't gotten to max level, but that hasn't stopped me from reading all the story spoilers. Without spoiling anything important, what the fuck happened? The game has you killing, before the endgame, Revan for his pants. I'm serious. The game has you killing the protagonist from Knights of the Old Republic for his pants. The Old Republic is extremely derivative of games that came before it. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but in the Old Republic's case, it makes for a very average MMO. The voice cutscenes, being the biggest feature, do not make up for the endless grind that you've gone through in any other MMO. The saddest part of the development of this game is how much it gets dwarfed by Star Wars Galaxies. Galaxies came out in 2003, a full 8 years before the Old Republic, and featured so many advances in gameplay that people still hold major nostalgia for it today. To become a Jedi, you couldn't just pick it from the get-go, you had to spend months working for it. If you have no problem playing an average MMO with a layer of Star Wars over it, then you're probably going to enjoy this game. If, like me, you're waiting for something a little more refreshing and fun to spend your time on, I'd hold out for Firefall or Guild Wars 2. I give Star Wars: The Old Republic a 4 out of 10.